Hello and welcome to Heart Containers, a daily Nintendo podcast where every Monday through Friday we run down the latest Nintendo news. I'm your host, Rami Fawaz, and this is the episode for Thursday, March 7th. Welcome to the future, and I guess the past, because the past is repeating itself, guys. Nintendo is back in the virtual reality business. That's right. Late last night, Nintendo released a press release saying that they are going to be selling the latest Labo kit, which is going to be virtual reality related. We're going to get into that in today's show, as well as a interesting story about how Nintendo is actually pulling back the amount of money they could be making on the mobile marketplace so that they can protect their brand. All of that and more in today's news.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality. And it's called the Wii U Game Pen.
This first story comes from Brian at Nintendo Everything. We've seen Nintendo team up with a few different companies on its mobile games over the past couple of years. One such company is Cygames, which helped create Dragalia Lost. Although that title is free to download, players can spend money on items. Unfortunately for Cygames, it sounds like players haven't been putting down enough cash. CyberAgent, the parent company of Cygames, reduced its fiscal year earnings forecast for the first time in 17 years in January. The reason? Dragalia Lost. While players of the mobile game have increased, revenue from each player has fallen short of projections. Some players were initially upset about the difficulty of winning rare characters during in-game lotteries. According to CyberAgent officials, Nintendo asked for this to be adjusted so that users wouldn't spend an excessive amount. A CyberAgent official said, Nintendo is not interested in making a large amount of revenue from a single smartphone game. If we managed the game alone, we would have made a lot more. The Wall Street Journal also reports, in some cases, players can spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars trying to win special items. Fearing such behavior will damage Nintendo's brand image, the company has asked its partners to adjust the game so that users won't spend too much, according to people familiar with Nintendo's strategy. Nintendo sees smartphone games primarily as a way to increase interest in its game characters so that players will consider buying traditional console games, the company's main business, according to one Nintendo official. The company is concerned it might be criticized for being greedy in smartphone games, the official said. So this seems to imply that Nintendo does not care about the finances when it comes to mobile games, and although it appears that the evidence is definitely on that side. I mean, here is case in point with Dragalia Lost, and if you go back and look at other games like Super Mario Run and Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, which I believe we talked about maybe last week, about how Dragalia Lost actually surpassed the total revenue of both of those games, and yet they're still getting content, they're still being maintained, they're still part of the mobile strategy. So all of that seems to hint that Nintendo is kind of using a different metric. Maybe they don't care as much about finances, although I'll argue that that's probably not true, unless something drastically has changed in the past few years. When Iwata came on stage or came up during the financial presentation when they first announced their partnership with DNA and that they were going to go into the mobile business, that significant moment for Nintendo, I believe in 2015, they listed three main reasons why they wanted to do mobile. One of them was finances. They wanted it to be financially stable. That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, these are games being made. Sure, they're not games in the traditional console sense. Mario Run is very different than Mario Odyssey, but there are developers, there are artists, there are programmers, there are managers, there's a lot of people that go into making a game like that, and they still need to be paid when they maintain those games, which most of them are still going, except the only thing I can think of that Nintendo has kind of closed down was Miitomo. Everything else is still up and running. So it makes sense that they would want to make money from those finances, as well as just the prospect of making money on the mobile marketplace. Who would not want to do that? So one of the goals was money. Another one was exactly what the Wall Street Journal is saying here, intellectual property recognition. that was a big transition point from the Wii U era to the Switch era, was that Nintendo got a lot wiser about how their main strength is in their intellectual properties, and one of the ways that they can spread knowledge of their intellectual properties is through the mobile marketplace. If they put Mario, Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem on mobile, then more people will know what that is. And that might lead into the third goal that they listed, which was synergy with the home consoles, synergy with their consoles or their traditional game business. And how that works is actually very similar to what we saw last year between Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, where they have direct mechanics in both of those games that benefit from each other. So if you were a Pokemon Go fan without a Switch, you may have been tempted to go buy a Switch in order to take some of your Pokemon into a home console experience and do whatever it is that you could do with them in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. So those were really the three main pillars, is what they call them, for mobile, and finances was definitely part of it. I guess you could argue, though, that maybe finance was the least important part. But if you do that, I'm going to come at you and say, well, then what was the point of Dragalia Lost? If you look at a game like Dragalia Lost, which if you don't know, it does not have any type of intellectual property connection with an old school Nintendo franchise. Dragalia Lost is its own property. As far as we can understand it, Cygames met up with Nintendo at some point and said, we have this idea for a mobile game, and Nintendo loved it. They loved that idea. They struck up a new partnership because they already had one with DNA. They made a new one with Cygames and said, we are going to work on this game together. It seems like Cygames is developing and Nintendo is publishing, and maybe Nintendo owns the intellectual property. But my point is, this game is completely fresh. It's completely new. It's new IP, and it has no connection with a game on any of their other consoles. There's no Dragalia Lost 3DS game or Dragalia Lost Switch game. So if you look at the three main goals I listed earlier, there can't be synergy between this mobile game and a home console or any console. And there also can't really be any major benefit between awareness for the intellectual property, because what are you making people aware of? If I go download Dragalia Lost right now and I fall in love with the lore and the characters of that game, I mean, it's localized to that game. Dragalia Lost is nowhere else. There's no other Dragalia Lost, TV show. There's no Dragalia Lost game that I can purchase on a different console. So why would you even need to strengthen that IP unless maybe Nintendo loved the lore so much and loved the premise so much of that game that they had plans to extend that in the future? But that's all guesswork, right? We don't know if that's true. The only obvious pillar that makes sense for a game like this is the finances. So it's so bizarre to me that Nintendo would be pulling Cygames back to the point where they're actually doing poorly financially, that they have to lower their forecasts for the first time in 17 years and outwardly say things like, hey, if we were making this game, if we were managing this game, we would actually charge more and we would make a lot more. But Nintendo is not interested in that. And the reason that they seem to hint that that's the case is because they're too afraid, I guess. They don't want to be seen as greedy. It's their branding that scares them. They are now in the mobile marketplace, and it's probably pretty easy for some companies to be seen as predatory in mobile. I mean, a lot of apps are predatory. They kind of try to confuse their audience, mostly kids, to make them see if they can kind of tap into addictive behaviors or deceptive behaviors so that they can get more money out of the long run. And over time, iOS and Android have been getting better at trying to prevent something like that. But Nintendo has always traditionally been a family-friendly brand, and they don't want to risk losing that just for a few extra bucks. It seems like that must be their only motivation at this point, because I can't see why they would pull back a game like Dragalia Lost for any other reason, since literally the only pillar that makes sense for that game is finances. So this entire story is really bizarre. I would love to get an update from Furukawa, the CEO and president of Nintendo, about what their current stance is on mobile so we can get a better understanding about that. All I know is that Furukawa has, when he was kind of getting inaugurated and they were passing the torch onto him to take over for the company, he has made a lot of comments saying that he wants to extend and expand their presence in the mobile space. I guess I'm wondering what that means now if it doesn't actually translate to dollars, if it doesn't translate to finances. I guess he just wants at some point or Nintendo as a whole, I guess, wants to have a large presence in the mobile space without necessarily making a whole lot of money, if it means that the way that they're making money could potentially be seen as predatory. Virtual reality is coming to the Nintendo Switch. It's no longer just a rumor. Nintendo announced the next installment of Labo Toy-Cons yesterday in an official press release that reads as follows. Experience a new dimension of Nintendo Labo with the launch of the Nintendo Labo VR kit on April 12th, which combines the innovative physical and digital gameplay of Nintendo Labo with basic VR technology to create a simple and shareable virtual reality experience for kids and families. Nintendo Labo VR Kit is the fourth kit in the Nintendo Labo series, providing the tools to make DIY cardboard creations called Toy-Con, play a variety of games with those creations, and discover how Nintendo Switch technology brings it all to life. Nintendo Labo VR Kit offers 6 new Toy-Con creations to build, including the Toy-Con VR goggles, which combine with the other creations to allow players to interact with the virtual world through imaginative, real-world actions. Fend off an alien invasion with the Toy-Con blaster, visit a colorful in-game ocean, and snap photos of the sea life with the Toy-Con camera, and so much more. Nintendo Labo VR Kit encourages passing around the Toy-Con creations among a group of people so everyone in the room can easily join in on the fun. To help encourage this social gameplay, players simply slip the Nintendo Switch console into the Toy-Con VR goggles and hold it up to their eyes to explore numerous games and experiences. No head strap needed. This new kit builds on the core tenets of Nintendo Labo: make, play, and discover, to introduce virtual reality in a way that's fun and approachable for both kids and kids at heart, said Doug Bowser, Nintendo of America's Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing, and also soon to be president because Reggie is retiring. We wanted to design an experience that encourages both virtual and real-world interactions among players through passing around Toy-Con creations. Nintendo Labo VR Kit will launch in retail stores with 2 primary configurations, one that includes all Toy-Con creations, and one that includes a smaller selection of projects to get started. Nintendo Labo VR Kit, available at the suggested retail price of $79.99. The complete Nintendo Labo VR Kit includes the Switch software, the materials to build all 6 of the Toy-Con projects. That includes the goggles, the blaster, the camera, the bird, the wind pedal, and the elephant, as well as a screen holder and safety cap. It's a good option for kids and families, they say, who want to dive into the full experience. Now, they're also selling the VR Kit starter set plus blaster, which is available for $39.99. The starter set includes the Switch software plus all the components to build the goggles, the blaster, as well as the holder and the safety cap. The starter set is a great entry point into the world of Nintendo Labo. Players that own the starter set can then purchase the following optional expansions set to expand their experience. They can get expansion set 1, which is available for $20, and that includes the elephant and the camera, or expansion set 2, also available for $20, which will include the wind pedal and the bird. They also mentioned that Toy-Con Garage mode will be included, and you'll be able to do new things with the VR functionality and program your own experiences with that. And they also remind you at the very end that this will all be in stores on April 12th. So if you didn't see this coming, it's because they kind of slipped it under the radar in a late night tweet. They announced that they were going to do this. My gut reaction was, all right, show me the video. I mean, when they first announced Nintendo Labo, they had a video, and every single time really they've had a Labo style announcement of any sort, it's always been accompanied by a visual aid so that we can see how it looks like to put it together and how it looks like to play the games. And so I immediately searched on YouTube and all the sites just to see if I can find this video, including their Twitter. Turns out there isn't one. This is very much a stealth announcement. They don't want to build up the hype too much. And when you read the press release, you can see why. Virtual reality in terms of gameplay for the past 5 years has always kind of catered to the high-end gaming market, to the people who could afford PCs that can run virtual reality games. Or on the PlayStation 4 side, you have to get a PlayStation 4 and a PSVR, which again is a lot cheaper than getting a powerful PC and something like an Oculus, but still not necessarily an entryway device if you're someone that is young, if you're a kid and just wants to have fun and more lighthearted VR experiences, that is what this is for. They said it time and time again. This is for kids. This is a starter experience. There's no head strap needed. It's about having fun with families and groups and passing it around. You can see that through the actual Toy-Cons themselves. I mean, there's an elephant Toy-Con. An elephant Toy-Con, where I'm assuming you put it on your face and you pretend you're an elephant and you see your big, long elephant snout, and you can move it around as you shake your head around. This is definitely an announcement for kids. They're hoping that this will be the Trojan horse to kind of revitalize the Labo marketplace in 2019. And I think you announce it like this in a press release, in a tweet, so that you don't really get the bulk of the gaming community all hyped up on potential virtual reality coming to Nintendo Switch, because that's going to be the headline. I mean, I even made it sound like that just a little bit because it sounds flashy, it sounds cool. I'll admit that that's exactly what it comes off as, but at the end of the day, it's kind of inaccurate, right? This is just another Labo kit, and it's very much aimed at kids. Now, does it have what it takes to be successful? Can it be successful where Labo wasn't previously not successful? Well, it definitely has the novelty factor of kind of bringing virtual reality to the masses in a way that no other virtual reality headset has really accomplished thus far. There is Google Cardboard, there are mobile experiences that have tried, but Nintendo, I think, would be the perfect company to kind of blend gaming experiences with that entryway VR series. And I think kids will also get very excited about the prospects of playing VR. But if I'm going to be honest, I already thought Labo was novel in the first place. If I was a kid, and I know that I'm speaking as an adult, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but if I was a kid, I would see VR just as cool as being able to build an entire cardboard robot and play as a robot without VR. So I'm not sure VR is going to like set a massive difference in terms of the idea by itself. Like, I'm not sure if VR is going to be the one thing that's going to take Labo from being an okay type of success into like this meteor, like this crazy rise that Nintendo might be expecting or might be hoping for. What's really fascinating is the price point. That's where I think Nintendo is really going to kill it with this fourth Labo kit. Because yes, the one kit that comes with everything is at $80. That is intense. That's very similar to the prices we saw earlier, which I think for the first two Labo kits, they were around $60, $70, $80. I can't remember if the robot one was $80 or $70. I want to say $70, and the first, the variety kit, Labo Kit 01, was $60. But this mega kit that includes everything, the goggles, the blaster, the bird, the elephant, $80. That's pretty high, but it seems like they learned their lesson because they have a starter kit at $40. So that's going to be one of the cheapest Labo kits you can get, and it's your entryway device, as well as for the first time, they finally did this. I've been begging Nintendo to do this for so long. You can buy expansion sets that don't come with software. So far, every single Labo package has come with cardboard and software, and that's kind of bumped up the price to the point where it's kind of unreasonable for some people who don't want to buy a Switch and then buy a Labo kit or multiple Labo kits if you just want to get your kids introduced to this world of building and creating. But now you can pay $40 to just to dip your toes in to say, hey, no, we just want the VR starter set. That's pretty reasonable. I mean, it's $20 less than a first party experience, which comes at $60, right? And then over time, maybe a couple months later, once you've had your fun, all you have to do is pay an additional $20 and you get 2 more pieces of cardboard. Well, I mean, it's more than 2 more pieces of cardboard, but 2 more Toy-Con cardboard sets to build, and then another $20. I would love to see them do that with all of their Toy-Con, but they're still going with this idea that the Toy-Con VR kit is going to have its own software package. So it's gonna be too confusing if they do that. So, because every single Toy-Con variety, like the Toy-Con variety had its own software, the Toy-Con robot had its own software. So if you start selling expansion kits left and right now, people are going to be confused whether or not they have the right software for that expansion kit. So I can see why they're starting with VR, and they probably will just keep it at VR, but I love the price point. I think that what they're doing with this business model of having the one kit where you can get everything, the starter kit, which is cheaper and you only get a couple things, and then the expansion kits are immediately going to make this a million times more attractive to the younger audience that they're aiming for, because it's all of a sudden way more reasonable. What Nintendo needs after this is a Switch price cut, or a Switch some sort of thing that takes the Switch and lowers it just a little bit, so it's a bit closer to where the 2DS and 3DS left off, and then they will really be in the perfect point to or in the perfect place rather, to appeal to that younger audience. Now here's the real question: am I gonna buy this? I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see how VR works on the Nintendo Switch. I've seen a couple reactions about this thus far, and they've been somewhat negative, at least what I've seen, because people are complaining that the Switch is nowhere near powerful enough to run VR, and I totally get that. It's not. It's nowhere near a PSVR or an Oculus, of course, but I don't think that's the point, right? They're trying to sell this to kids, and I think they're just trying to have a simple kind of magical time where the fun comes from building it and then all of a sudden being transported into a VR world. Even though that world is probably not going to have the best frame rate or graphics, that doesn't matter. It's still going to run on the imagination of it all. I think what I'm going to like the most about this is the potential for what this means with first-party content. We've already seen Nintendo take Labo and update their first-party games to kind of interact with it in some way. They did that with Mario Kart and the driving steering wheel Labo. So I think if they do that, I will totally buy this. Because even if the VR updates that they put in their first-party games are very minor, it's still worth it to me, especially if the entrance point is $40. If I can pay $40, get the basics of the basic for a VR headset on Nintendo Switch, build that up, have fun building it, because it's kind of peaceful in the same way that you build Legos. And then who knows, maybe they update Zelda Breath of the Wild for like a VR mode where you don't walk around, let's say, but you can look around. Yeah, that's cool. Or they do something similar with Mario Kart again, where you could put on the headset. The problem with that I don't know how they're going to get around necessarily, is that they kind of lock themselves in by saying there's no head strap. The moment you say there's no head strap, it limits you tremendously in terms of what you can do, because one hand has to be holding the thing to your head at all times. You can't really hold a traditional controller while you do that. So that kind of limits what you can and cannot do with this kit, and that also might mean that they never decide to update their first-party games, that it just continues to just be this fun, innovative little project that's going to inspire, imagination and kids who want to pick up the Switch this year. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to buy it, but I do think the price point is right. And I do think who they're aiming for is going to be excited about this, not necessarily leaps and bounds more excited than what Labo was providing earlier. The real question is, can Nintendo do something with the Switch itself so that it truly is an entryway into the Labo ecosystem so that kids can play this when it comes out? Whew, those were two really big stories for today, but that's all I had for Thursday's show. If you have any comments, questions, thoughts, opinions, concerns, or anything else that you want to talk to me about, feel free to head over to the website heartcontainerspodcast.com, or you can talk to me personally on Twitter, where my handle is @RomeFawaz. That's @ROMEFAWAZ. This has been Heart Containers for Thursday, March 7th. Thank you so much for joining me today, and make sure you tune in tomorrow for the last episode of Heart Containers for the week.